Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Santhosh Kumar, working as an assistant professor of English at Kusujayanti College, Autonomous, Bengaluru. And today I'm here to talk about something on testimonials. Testimonial literature is derived from the word testimonio, which means witness narrative. Testimonial literature, or testimonio, has a theoretical discourse and its birth in the Latin American, where the women in the Latin America they protested against the patriarchal norms of the government. And most important thing, people in the contemporary times they often have a misconception by saying that testimonio and feminism they go hand in hand, and it is completely false. Testimonio as a theoretical discourse or as a political discourse, it attacks the power structures at different levels. And one of the major concerns of testimonial is that it questions history and historiographies. And most important thing about testimonial is that it challenges history. And through testimonials, it is evident that history, right from the good old past until now, they have spoken only about the importance of kings or the importance of an individual. Whereas testimonials, they talk about the collective suffering of the marginalized voices. To put very simple, the voices of the muted are being brought to the limelight. So this is how testimonial operates. And coming to the major argument, the good old past and even till now in the academics, they believe that feminism and testimonial they go hand in hand. And feminism, if you see as a movement or as a school or as a theoretical discourse, it is completely for the empowerment of each and everyone. And testimony, even though testimony is also for the empowerment of everyone, the major difference which differentiate testimonial and feminism is that testimonial, to be honest, it is about the collective plight of an individual. To put very simple, testimonial means witness narrative. Any person who's being victimized or any person who's being traumatized about what had happened to him, that is said to be when what happened to him, that is said to be a typical testimonial. To put in other words, when an individual, when he or she is being problematized, or when his or her identity is being questioned by the power structures, and being homelessness in one's own home, that is said to be the typical plight of testimonials. When it comes to feministic discourses, we have so many conflicts among the feminists, and now we are living in a society where people say that they strive for gender equality, they strive for gender disparity, and even though compared to the previous generations, this generation has changed a lot, but yet then we have a very big problem. We have a very big problem confronting us, which talks about the feministic discourses. And what the unique difference between testimonial and feminism is that, as I said, testimonial it traverses the unexplored binaries, and when an individual, when he or she talks about his or her suffering, that is said to be a testimonial. And through testimonials, it will be evident to say that the collective plight, okay, through the individual, the collective plight can be culled out. And when it comes to feministic discourses, women folks all around the globe they started to write, and their voices are being universalized. When it comes to testimonial, the problem is with the universalization. Most of the power structures they neglect the fact that they neglect the voices and the oppression of the certain communities by saying that their voices cannot be accommodated, or their voices cannot be registered as a voices of the victims. So this is the one of the major striking force between testimonial and feminism. And another thing is that there's a critic called John Beverly, and he believes that, according to him, the best way to learn subaltern is through testimonial literature. I just repeat, there's a famous critic called John Beverly, and according to him, the best way to learn subaltern is through testimonial literature. And there's another critic called George Gugelberger, and according to him, the testimonialista can explain his or her own personal testimony directly by addressing a specific interlocutor. I just repeat, there's a famous critic called George Kugelberger, and according to him, the testimonialista can explain his or her own personal testimony directly by addressing a specific interlocutor. and the writer of a testimonio is said to be a testimonialista. And here people often they confront us by saying that this particular theory had its source in Latin America, and how come the word like testimonialista, it clearly defines, it is a Spanish word, and certain people they put forth confrontations. It's very simple. Spanish is said to be a very common language spoken in the spoken in the Latin American regions. So this is how things operate. This is how things operate. And another most important thing is that in the contemporary times, film studies is gaining momentum in the academic circle. And to understand testimonial to a greater extent, what we can say is that it is high time for us to redefine, to revamp the concept of literature. In the good old past, people defined literature as reflection of life or mirror of life or age of life, whereas in the contemporary times, even defining literature has been changed a lot. Literature is said to be culture specific production. I just repeat, literature is said to be culture specific production. Since I mentioned the word culture, it is apt for me and it's my duty to talk about culture studies. Culture studies is said to be a broad and comprehensive term which includes literature, anthropology, economics, politics, social sciences, and so on. And after the advent of culture studies, the gap between the anthropologists and the humanistic scholars have been bridged. So, thus begins the interdisciplinary approach to knowledge. The anthropologists and the humanistic scholars have an intellectual thrive on give and take. So the advantage is that literature have become interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. Literary texts have gained the status of autotelic. The meaning of the word autotelic is that autonomy status. So after the advent of culture studies, testimonial writings are gaining momentum in the academic circle. The other equivalent word for testimonial writing, what we can say is that life narratives. And we have got so many renowned works for testimonial, and one of the famous masterpieces is that I Rigoberta Menchu. The title of the work is I Rigoberta Menchu. It is about a suffering of a Rigoberta Menchu, a suffering of a woman. And most important thing is that most of the testimonials in the good old past, they were being women centered, and the voices of the women were being recorded in testimonials. Whereas in the contemporary times, even the voices of men pertaining to testimonial writing is gaining momentum. And most important thing in the Indian context, people have started to work on the Dalit writings. Dalit literature are being classified into a particular genre called Dalit testimonials. And one of the most important thing in testimonial is that testimonial they believe in oral traditions, and also at the same time they question a particular concept called how authentic is authenticity. Because as a human beings in a day-to-day life in the contemporary world, to put very simple, in the same and world of postmodernism, we often say that we need certain proofs, we need proofs for documentation of facts. And testimonial and testimonialistas, they often say that how authentic is authenticity. And testimonials, they often say that the truths, whatever is being told or whatever is being written in the past are said to be falsified truths. And to put it very simple, the main crux of testimonial is that making the unknown things as known. I just repeat, the main crux or the main idea of testimonial is that making the unknown things as known. And to put it very simple, to understand testimonial, it doesn't mean that one should be victimized or one should be traumatized. To put very simple, when one has got the compassion towards the muted voices, that is said to be the birth of testimonial. For example, if I'm walking in the streets of Bangalore, or if I'm walking in any streets, if I find any social injustice, and if I started to write a poem, or if I start to write any novella, even if I write any short story, that is said to be a testimonial. And one beauty about testimonial is that, as I said, through individual, the collective plight is brought out. To put very simple, testimonial, it has started to testimonial has started to revamp the entire academic circle. Testimonial has started to revamp and question the histories. And another major thing is that in the Indian context, testimonials are huge in number. The plight of Adivasis of the tribal discourses, they are said to be the typical example for testimonials. Even if you take the sufferings of Dalit, those things can be categorized as testimonials. And when it comes to the Dalit women folks, they undergo a particular concept called double or triple jeopardy. Dalit women folks, all over the Dalit women folks in India, they undergo a particular phenomenon called double jeopardy or triple jeopardy. And the meaning of this term is that first they are being oppressed in terms of caste, and next second thing they are being oppressed in terms of gender, and third thing they are being oppressed in terms of gender by the people of the by the people or by the caste of their or by the sorry by the people or by the men of the same caste. So the women and when women folks from Dalit when women folks from Dalit when they started to write or when they started to showcase these things, those things are now being categorized as Dalit testimonials. And on the other hand, if you take women folks who represent the tribal literature or who represent the tribal paradigm, even their writings can be classified as testimonials. And to put very simple, tribes are the only people on earth who believe that they are tribe only people on earth who believe, and it is an acceptable and universal fact that they're the only people on earth who are in tune with nature. And the word development is said to be a negative term for tribals. Okay, the word development is said to be a negative term for tribals. So things operate. Things. This is how things operate pertaining to testimonial discourses. And testimonial is not an emerging phenomenon. It is a day-to-day phenomenon. And any writer who records the plight of the sufferings or who records the plight of the marginalized voices, those writings can be categorized or can be classified under a testimonial. And to put it very simple, testimonial, on the other hand, records or stresses the fact that books are said to be the repository of cultures which will keep the wounds alive. So, on the whole, I would just like to conclude by saying that it will be apt to say that through testimonials that literature is an illusion, but only through that illusion one can understand the real meaning of life. Thank you.